Diesel's death certificate just got signed on January 1st, 2026. Tesla Semi Gen 2 now recharges in just 45 minutes after 7 hours of hauling, ending the era where trucks spent more time charging than drivers spent resting. Elon didn't reveal robo-taxi breakthroughs. He revealed something far more dangerous to the oil industry. 17 radical redesigns, 1.2 megawatt peak charging, 15% more efficient, and cameras positioned for full autonomy. But here's what nobody's asking. If this truck can now match diesel duty cycles while costing 60% less to operate, how many trucking companies can actually afford not to switch? And what happens to diesel infrastructure when Tesla hits 50,000 units per year? Let me tell you what really happened when Tesla engineers placed the 2017 prototype next to Gen 2. There was this moment of silence, because what they were looking at wasn't an upgrade. It was proof that everything they thought they knew about the Semi had to be rebuilt from scratch. The original Semi looked like it rolled off a science fiction movie set. That aggressive nose, that massive windshield stretching forever, those curves that made you stop and stare. It was gorgeous. It was also completely wrong for the real world. Gen 2 looks almost boring by comparison, and that's exactly why fleet operators who ignored Gen 1 are now writing checks. Look at that front bumper. It went from this complex, integrated piece of art to what looks like basic modular panels. Sounds like a downgrade until you talk to a fleet manager who just had a driver clip a loading dock at 3 a.m. That old bumper? $8,000 repair and 3 days of downtime. New modular design? $800 and back on the road by lunch. Insurance companies aren't stupid. They've already started dropping premiums for Gen 2 because they know what's coming. But here's where it gets emotional for the engineers. That beautiful windshield everyone loved, they had to kill it. Cutting it down saved hundreds of pounds and dropped drag from 0.36 to 0.33. When they first heard 0.03 improvement, half the team thought it was meaningless. Then the fleet accountants did the math and everyone went quiet. That tiny number means 25 to 40 extra miles per charge. Scale that across 365 days and 100 trucks. You just saved someone's company $4 to $6 million a year in energy costs alone. Suddenly, that beautiful glass wasn't beautiful anymore. It was expensive dead weight stealing money from drivers trying to make a living. This same brutal honesty drove the battery decision, and honestly, it was controversial inside Tesla. Early semis used LFP batteries, cheap, safe, proven, but they needed 900 kilowatt hours of these cells to hit 500 miles. And that battery pack weighed so much it ate into payload capacity. In trucking, every pound of truck equals one less pound of cargo, which means less money per trip. Fleet managers were polite, but the message was clear. We can't make money if the truck itself weighs too much. So Tesla switched to 4680 cells for Gen 2. Same 500-mile range with only 800 kilowatt hours because these cells pack almost double the energy per pound. But here's the part that shocked everyone. Tesla could have pushed range to 600 or even 700 miles with these better batteries. They deliberately didn't. Dan Priestley leaked why, and it reveals something most people miss about Tesla's strategy. Drivers legally have to rest after 8 hours. Even with 700-mile range, humans can't use it without brakes that kill the advantage anyway. Tesla realized 500 miles matches driver regulations perfectly while keeping the battery pack small and light. That decision dropped Gen 2 below 23,000 pounds, thousands of pounds lighter than Gen 1. Those saved pounds? They convert to 40,000 to 80,000 extra revenue per truck per year through increased cargo capacity. The battery choice wasn't about impressive specs. It was about making drivers and fleet owners actual money. Now we get to January 1st, 2026. Tesla engineers are at a mega charger station filming Gen 2, and when it hits 1.2 megawatts, they start cheering like they just won the Super Bowl. You can hear the genuine excitement in their voices. And they should be excited. No other electric truck on Earth has hit this charging speed. Not Nikola with their promises. Not Volvo with their careful pilots. Nobody. But raw numbers don't tell the full story. At 1.2 megawatts, Gen 2 adds 16 miles of range every minute it's plugged in. In 45 minutes, that's theoretically 720 miles, though real-world driving fully loaded means you actually get 400 to 500 miles, which perfectly matches what the battery holds. This can't be coincidence. Tesla engineered the entire system so mandatory driver rest periods align exactly with charging needs. Think about what this means practically. Federal law says drivers must take a 30-minute break after 8 hours of driving. Tesla designed Gen 2 so that mandatory break equals a full charge. Zero additional downtime. Meanwhile, diesel trucks refuel in 15 minutes, but drivers still take 30-minute breaks anyway for food and bathroom. The supposed diesel speed advantage is fake. Both vehicles stop for 30 minutes regardless. Tesla just made that stop time productive instead of wasted. There's something deeper here that most people are missing. That new charging port is MCS compliant, Megawatt Charging System Standard. This is huge because it kills the fear that's been paralyzing the industry. Fleet operators have been terrified of getting locked into one manufacturer's charging network. What if you pick the wrong company and get stranded? MCS compliance means Tesla Semi charges at any compliance station built by anyone. Volvo, Daimler, third parties, anyone. Tesla pulled the same move that won them the passenger car war with NACS. They're not building a charging monopoly. They're positioning themselves to benefit when everyone else builds charging infrastructure. When Volvo builds an MCS station for their trucks, Tesla Semi becomes more valuable. That's not competition, that's competitive judo. The thermal management redesign matters more than the speed numbers, honestly. Pumping 1.2 megawatts creates insane heat that kills batteries fast if you don't cool it properly. Gen 2's port has these advanced cooling pathways that prevent thermal stress during repeated high-power charging. Industry people estimate this extends battery life from maybe 500,000 miles to potentially 1,000,000 miles before serious degradation. In money terms, that's the difference between replacing a $150,000 battery pack once versus never replacing it during the truck's working life. For a 100-truck fleet, that's $15 million in avoided costs. The charging speed makes headlines, but the cooling engineering determines whether you make money over 10 years. All of this compounds with Gen 2's efficiency number, 1.7 kilowatt hours per mile versus Gen 1's 2.0. That's 15% better, and it came from stacking small improvements everywhere. Aerodynamics, motors, weight, software. The real impact hits when you calculate operational costs. Diesel semis get about 6.5 miles per gallon. At $4 per gallon, that's 62 cents per mile. Gen 2 at 1.7 kilowatt hours per mile, using cheap industrial electricity at 10 cents per kilowatt hour? 17 cents per mile. That's 72% cheaper to operate. Do that math across 100,000 miles yearly. Diesel burns $62,000 in fuel. Electric uses $17,000. You're saving $45,000 per truck per year. For a 50-truck fleet, that's $2.25 million annually just in fuel. But here's what keeps me up at night thinking about this. That 1.7 number means Tesla can keep shrinking batteries in future versions while maintaining range. Imagine Gen 3 hitting 1.5 kilowatt hours per mile with a 700 kilowatt hour battery doing the same 500 miles. Cheaper trucks, lighter trucks, more payload, better margins. This isn't about today's savings. This is about watching competitors try to catch up to moving target that keeps accelerating away. Now look carefully at Gen 2's body. See those new cameras above the wheel arches? Additional sensors on the roof? Proximity detection in the bumpers? Those aren't styling touches. That's autonomous freight hardware already installed and waiting. Gen 1 could maybe support autonomy someday if you redesigned a bunch of stuff. Gen 2 is autonomy ready right now, today, waiting only for regulations and software activation. The economics here are almost unfair. A human driver costs $60,000 to $80,000 yearly. Eliminate that across 10 trucks, and you save $600,000 to $800,000 annually. But that's not even the big win. Human drivers legally max out at 11 hours daily. An autonomous truck runs 22 hours per day with only charging brakes. You just doubled how much revenue that $200,000 truck generates. The return on investment calculations become completely different. Tesla hasn't announced autonomous freight because regulations aren't ready and they're avoiding controversy until the time is right. But the hardware is already out there in every Gen 2, collecting data, learning roads. When regulations shift and freight lobbying suggests 3 to 5 years, Tesla sends an over-the-air update and these trucks start driving themselves. Competitors will need years to redesign and test. Tesla downloads an update. This is why traditional truck makers are genuinely scared. They're not fighting an electric truck company. They're fighting an autonomous freight platform that happens to be electric and is already on the road learning. The manufacturing story ties it all together, and honestly, it's brilliant. Gen 2's simpler body panels and forgiving tolerances sound boring until you think about building 200 trucks daily. Gen 1 was hand-built, fine for dozens of units, impossible for 50,000 yearly. Generation 2 is designed for robot assembly lines. Every minute saved building one truck multiplies across 200 daily units. Simple panels mean faster production, fewer defects, predictable quality. Tesla is keeping early production limited on purpose, learning from Model 3's production hell. By late 2026, when they scale up, they want manufacturing so smooth they can hit 100,000 units yearly by 2027 to 2028. Scale changes everything. At 10,000 units, each semi might cost $250,000 to build. At 50,000 units, maybe $180,000. At 100,000 units, potentially $150,000. Tesla sells them for $200,000, undercutting diesel trucks while keeping 25 to 30% profit margins. Competitors can't match that price without volume, can't get volume without demand, can't create demand without competitive prices. It's a self-reinforcing cycle that becomes a death trap for anyone starting years behind. Here's the part that makes this potentially unstoppable. Tesla announced Gen 2 on January 1st, 2026, because delivery starts this year. Not eventually, this year. PepsiCo's been running pilot semis for 2 years under real freight conditions. That data built Gen 2. Production scales now while Volvo's electric semi gets 250 miles per charge. Freightliners manages 230 miles, and both charge at 350 kilowatts, less than 1/3 of Tesla's capability. They're not even in the same category anymore. The gap is too wide to close without brand new platforms requiring 4 to 5 years of development. The question isn't whether electric replaces diesel. The question is whether anyone besides Tesla will even matter in freight by 2030. So here's the bottom line. Tesla Semi Gen 2 just answered the question we opened with. Trucking companies can't afford not to switch anymore. The 45-minute charging after 7 hours of driving, 1.2 megawatt capability, 15% efficiency gains, and 17 design changes prove this isn't about competing with diesel. It's about replacing it entirely. The numbers don't lie. 72% lower fuel costs, $45,000 saved per truck annually, doubled payload capacity, and autonomous hardware already installed. Traditional truck manufacturers have 4 to 5 years to catch up, while Tesla scales to 50,000 units yearly. By then, the gap becomes insurmountable. This is the same pattern that destroyed legacy automakers in passenger EVs, now accelerating in commercial freight. Diesel's end isn't gradual. Gen 2 just made it immediate. The real question? When will the first fully autonomous Tesla Semi complete a coast-to-coast run? Because the hardware is already on the road. Will regulations allow it by 2028 or delay until 2030? Drop your prediction in the comments below. And if you found this analysis valuable, hit that like button. It helps us bring you more deep dives like this. This is Tesla Zone, where we break down the technology reshaping transportation. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next breakdown on Tesla's autonomous freight strategy coming in 48 hours. The diesel era just ended on January 1st, 2026. The electric freight revolution is here, charging at 1.2 megawatts.